would I lie and say I feel good when I don't feel good? All I really want is to be happy and truly feel good. I got everybody looking at me like why she don't feel good. I done seen the stars, I done seen the lights, but I can't forget that I'm still hood. Why would I lie and say I feel good when I don't feel good? All I really want is to be happy and truly feel good. I got everybody looking at me like why she don't feel good. I done seen the stars, I done seen the lights, but I can't forget that I'm still hood. Why would I lie and say I feel good when I don't feel good? All I really want is to be happy and truly feel good. I got everybody looking at me like why she don't feel good. I done seen the stars, I done seen the lights, but I can't forget that I'm still hood.
Hello everyone. So we are going to go ahead and start with today. It is Keeping It Real While We Heal. This is a lovely collaboration between Gwen's Girls and Light Social Change Agents. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to open up a discussion today about teen mental health. We're just going to touch on some topics that we think don't get enough light, and we'll just kind of discuss our opinions on them. And I'll go ahead and start and introduce myself. I am Nia Sandea. Basically, I went to Pittsburgh Kappa, graduated and moved to LA, and I do some stuff in Pittsburgh, and so here I am. And then
I'm Courtney. I grew up here in Pittsburgh. I went to City Charter High School. And after high school, I went straight into the workforce. I work at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which is it's kind of like a glass school. We're a museum. We have a gift shop. We do a bunch of stuff, but I work there full time.
Nice.
Hi, and I'm Charlize. I also grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to Kappa as well. And then I moved to New York, and I was learning up there, schooling, all that good stuff. And then I came back to Pittsburgh, and I was working and all that other good stuff. And now I'm here.
Amazing, ladies. And so I want to go ahead and point out that I'm 23.
I'm 22.
22.
23.
23. And so we are just fresh out of our adolescent phase. We are new adults. And so I would like to point out that we understand that we're no longer teens, but I think that the hindsight that we've kind of have gathered in these few years have given us a little bit of insight to really approach this topic with a lot of wisdom. And so the first question that I'd like to bring to the table is, what does it mean to have a mental health disorder?
So, I'd like to speak on this because back in, it was either 6th or 7th grade, I did something very stupid. But one of the punishments I did, instead of getting expelled from Kappa, was I had to go to Western Psych and get, just
an evaluation?
Yeah, get an evaluation.
Interesting, okay.
And I did, and it was really weird because you just take this test, like you fill out this paper, and then they tell you something. And I was diagnosed with depression, and it was really confusing. Because I was like a very happy person. I was at ATC all the time, performing all the time, and I was at Kappa doing what I loved. And so I was just like, depression, we don't know her. Like, we've never met her. I'm very happy. But as I got older, especially this year, I realized I do have depression. Like, it's there. And it's just a part of my being. It's not something that you hear it and then you're like, well, you have all these things that people put up that say this is what depression looks like. And it's like, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
A lot of time it just looks like you laying in the bed and you don't want to get up. And you have all the things that you want to do, but you're tired.
You're tired, yeah.
Right.
It's just the thought of going anywhere else is just like tiring. The thought is exhausting. I actually think that leads us into our next question is, what does it mean to be mentally well? Because that's the thing is, so some days you feel depressed or you feel just, and we won't necessarily call it depressed all the time, but just you feel unmotivated. You don't want to get out of bed. I'll even be honest and I'll put it out there. Like, some days getting out of bed is very hard. Some days feeding myself is hard. Drinking appropriate amounts of water, or even wanting to get out and go outside and see the sunlight. And I noticed that on days when I force myself to, I feel so much better. And I feel like that, and then I'm like, wow, look at me, I'm mentally well today, right? I fed myself breakfast. I even threw some vegetables in there. I had a few, bottles of water today. I got up and I got some self-tapes done. I got some things accomplished. So I feel like when I do that, I feel mentally well, or I feel like in a better place than I was the day before. But again, depression is a condition. You go in and out of it. Some days you feel mentally well, and other days you.
It's learning how to motivate yourself and actually get up and get going.
Right.
You know, and that's why like motivational speakers do so well, because it's like, it's not that they're telling you things you don't understand or that you don't know, but they're kind of telling you how they did it.
How they did it, yeah.
And how they do it every day. Like my brother, he is like the best motivational speaker ever. And I know he has the same problems as a lot of us. And I've seen him going through his rough patches that look so similar to mine. But he gets up and he writes down his goals and he like makes his smoothies and he's doing his vegan thing. Yeah, like, oh my God.
right. Remember, smoothies just helped a lot, actually.
Yeah. And so, like, and when I say he's mentally well, I don't really think any of us are mentally well, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's just humanity. Like, we're all so sick. Our earth is so sick.
Very true.
So it's us learning how to live every day and putting these things into practice in your daily life.
And I would like to even touch on that then, like, if you think that, and I agree to some extent that being mentally well isn't really real, because like we said, you go in and out. Some days you're going to wake up and you're not going to want to get out of bed, and then you know you're going to wake up later that week and you're going to feel like, okay, enough's enough, I have to get up, I need to get in the shower, I need to get some things done, I need to make a few meals. So I think that kind of really deconstructs the stigmatism around being depressed. Like, and like I know that I have family members who have gone through mental disorders, and even saying, like, my mother had my grandmother who was mentally ill growing up, she had no idea what that was, and it was so scary and it's so confusing. And I think that really it's not so big, it's not so scary. It really is something that we all face every single day. You go in it, you come out of it. And I think that if we talked about it more and we were more open about the fact that sometimes I just really don't feel like getting up, and that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily depressed or that I'm lazy. It just means that I'm having a hard time today as a human being. Yeah. And if we approached it more like that, I feel like more people who do face it every day or are having a harder time with it would feel more comfortable getting the help that they need, or even, you know, not having to hide the fact that they're, you know, not feeling well.
Yeah, and I also think that people surround the word wellness in general around happiness for some reason. And I'm realizing, like, as I get older, that, like, happiness is a fleeting thing. And it's supposed to be. Like, it's if it's not fleeting and you're living in happiness the entire time, you're going to do stupid stuff because that's when you're happy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so wellness, it's like there's no one way to be well, but it really does take getting to know yourself. Like, for me, I've learned that I need a playlist to get me up in the morning. And
I love that too.
Like, I used to do it in college, and I was in a small dorm room by myself. But sometimes I did not want to get up to go to my 8 a.m. classes. And I would have to play this playlist and do it until I got up.
Right.
And then I stopped doing it for a long time until this month. And then I made one again. And it just really, it's like something in the chords or the certain songs I'm listening to, the lyrics, it makes me want to get up. It no longer lets me stay in bed and just grovel, because I can go to sleep in 5 seconds. Like, I have no problem putting myself back to sleep.
I know that's right.
Really? So whenever I have, like, that stuff that helps me feel well or feel good or feel motivated, those are all words that I kind of don't.
I know.
It means so many things. But when I have that feeling, you know that feeling when you want to get up and do stuff now.
Yes.
And
oh my
that
goodness,
is the
it's
best
like
feeling.
It is, and you're like, I can accomplish some things, and you get up, and as you start to tackle them, and you see how much you like accomplish in a day, you're like, wow, like,
yeah, like
that made me feel good. Like, getting up and actually doing the things that I was like either too afraid to do or just didn't feel like doing. Once I actually do them, now I feel great. Now I feel better. What I was wanting to feel all along, I feel once I actually just get up and push through doing it. Yeah. Also, you said something that I would like to touch on, that happiness, everyone thinks that it's like everyone's searching for happiness. Everyone wants to constantly live in happiness. But I think that what's important, this little golden nugget, is that happiness is not a destination. It is a condition. You will be happy and then you will be sad. It's a mood. It will come, it will go, it will certainly come again. But it is not a destination. And I think a lot of us look at happiness as like, okay, once I, fulfill that career goal, or once I, marry that person, or I find that person even, then I'll be happy, and then my life will begin, and then I won't feel this way anymore.
Happens. and it's not there.
Right. Exactly.
This should be taught in school.
Honestly, really.
Because I'm learning stuff right now. And
Right.
like, I never would have thought about it like that. Like, I've never thought, or like kind of just like put into place that happiness is an emotion, just like everything else.
Just like everything else.
Like,
yeah.
we all know if we're sad, it's okay. We're not going to be sad in a little bit. So that makes
Exactly.
us feel a little bit better.
Right.
Why don't we have that same
feeling about happiness.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we do kind of have this societal norm that like happy is what we're supposed to be. Everyone's supposed to be peaceful and happy and cheerful and jolly all the time. And if you're not, then there's something wrong with you. You have an attitude. You're mean. You're whatever.
Especially
But it's
on black girls. Like,
Girl.
please don't let me be sad in public. Please don't let me talk. If I don't talk, then obviously there's something wrong.
Right. And it's like we all are allowed to be human beings sometimes. And honestly, if I'm looking like I don't want to talk, it's better that I don't.
Right.
Because if I let it out, it won't be nice.
Also, another thing on wellness, it's that with the happiness thing. I'm not going to say sadness is good, even though it is, but crying, people don't also involve that in wellness too. And I think that there's this whole stigma around crying that shouldn't be there, because I'm a crybaby.
It's a huge release.
It's
such a
you need it. Like,
Yeah.
my grandma, I've been crying a lot lately. My grandma, every time I cry to her, she's like, you need your tears. Like, you're supposed to cry. If
Yeah.
you didn't cry, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, tears are
You're
telling you
bottling
that
it
you're
up if you didn't.
Yeah, it's telling you that you're overwhelmed with something and you need to let that out. And in order for you to figure out what's wrong, you have to make that release happen.
Right. It's okay with you guys. I think I'm going to shift into our next question. And so our next question is, how important is it to have mental health providers reflective of African American and the LGBTQ community? I think that's a great question.
Yes.
I'll start by saying, actually, that this year I have been looking for a therapist, just because 2020 goes without saying, it was a rough year for us all. All right. And I think that just with everything that I've been this year, relationship and friendship and job, career, everything wise, I needed a therapist. And so I started looking for a therapist online in Los Angeles. And I specifically put into the search engine, I was like, African American female therapist in LA. And luckily there is a huge database of them in Los Angeles. They actually have an entire like website. But I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to talk to just anybody. I can't talk to somebody that's not going to understand what I'm going through, that's not going to be able to relate to me. I specifically need an African American woman. I just do. And I think that that's important. And I feel like it should be available always to everyone, just because, I mean, how many of us have gone to doctors or have gone to the dentist or whatever in the medical field, and, you know, you see a white doctor and they're not as, you know, understanding, or they're not, you know, wanting to listen to all of your symptoms and all the thoughts that you have about what you might be. They're just like, oh, you've got to have this, or we're going to go ahead and run some tests and get you out of here. They don't really take you seriously.
You know what? They don't even do that sometimes, because this month I've been to doctors a lot. Because I was like, my health insurance might expire soon, so I might as well use it.
Yes, ma'am.
But I recently went to doctors because I have eczema, and I had this new patch growing, and I thought it was ringworm. So I went, and it was getting better from at-home treatments and all that other stuff. And then I showed her, and she wouldn't even, since I was the last person, she didn't even want to do the scrape test. She was like, oh, it's okay. It's probably ringworm. We can't really tell unless we do a scrape test. And
We'll do the test.
so do the test. And she was like really rushing me out. And I just didn't want to be there anyways. I kind of wanted to leave.
You feel
already.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what now? And then they're like, well.
Right. And what I was like,
I'm sorry, just
Go ahead.
about the medical field and just like the attitude towards black women in general is, what's the expectation? You're a black woman, so you either have an attitude or you're stupid. That's what they think.
Yes.
Despite
Or
what
you don't know what you're
statistics
talking
show.
about.
yeah, or exactly.
You don't know pain.
Right. Or you don't know pain. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they say something to you, and if you don't have an attitude, then they assume you're too stupid to ask more questions. Okay? And they just keep it pushing. They're like, she didn't say anything, so fine. But what it really is you're picking up on their energies.
Yeah.
You get it. And it's like, nobody wants to sit here and be like told, like, you don't understand your own body.
Right.
Like, what? You don't want to deal with that. So you're just like, you know what?
I'm going to go.
I'm going to leave. Yeah.
And so with this being said about our experiences going to see, you know, medical doctors, then it's like you would understand our concern for seeing someone with our mental health, because mental health is so abstract, and it's so, you know, it's exactly how I'm feeling and what I can express to you. So if you can't hear me and understand where I'm coming from and be able to relate and really help me in some way, then we're not going to get exactly what's the point.
And I wrote down right here when you said that, I said, we're the black women therapists in Pittsburgh. Because for a city that goats and galls about how many hospitals y'all have, I went to my PCP and I did the test again. They said, baby, you got depression, anxiety. I said, I know. I need a therapist. And then I said, okay, well, I need a black woman therapist. And they're like, we don't have any of those in our practice.
Wow.
Why don't you? And then if I have health insurance and you can pay for my therapy, but you can't give me a black woman therapist, then I have health insurance I'm not going to use.
Yeah,
it's not fair. So it's disgusting to me, actually.
It is. No, I totally understand, and I think that is,
and it's needed.
Yeah. And then I really do want to make sure we touch on on African American and LGBTQ plus communities.
I was getting ready to get there
because these are the most marginalized communities,
and I would
across the world.
Absolutely, and I would say that especially this year. So the question was, how important is it to have mental health providers that reflect both African American and LGBT communities? And I would like to say that I think this year specifically, again, 2020, one of the hardest years for us all. I think that we saw a lot in the media. I mean, George Floyd, we don't have to go there. Breonna Taylor, we don't have to go there. Then there was the transgender who was attacked on Hollywood Boulevard. We don't have to go there. But what I'm saying is that there are all of these instances in which these were things that if you were African American or if you were transgender or of the LGBT community, you carried it with you this year. Throughout everything else that you've dealt with, you've carried this heaviness with you. I think that we can all sit here and relate to the fact that we're tired of seeing African Americans being killed. We're tired of it being broadcasted. We're tired of it being shared by white influencers who are being quite performative. It's so heavy. It's so heavy. And it goes without saying, and a lot of people don't really understand. Like, if you aren't of these communities, you don't understand. You don't carry it with you. And so to go see a therapist or to go see someone about these very heavy topics or these very heavy feelings that you're carrying around that will gaslight you or who will, try to give you some suggestions of things that just clearly will not work because they're not feeling what we're feeling. They don't, they're not taking it in like we're taking it in. I think that it is extremely important that we load these fields with more of everyone of all colors. I think we need white women, Asian women, black women. We need LGBTQ of all kinds. We need lesbian therapists. We need, gay therapists, transgender therapists. We need someone for everyone because we all have so many different issues that we carry around. We need to be able to discuss and relate with one another. And if we have white people dominating these fields who will never get us, they've clearly built an entire society.
And even those that
getting us. Right, and so it's very hard to get the real help that we need. And another thing that I was talking about is that I, for one, am someone that I get a lot of therapy just out of sharing and being open. I'm an open book with a lot of my life just because I feel like when I express and I reach out and someone else is like, oh, I've been there, I've done that too, it makes me feel less embarrassed. It makes me feel less, isolated about my situation. And so I think that therapy is really important. But I'll use anyone as my therapist. That's my problem. I'm like, you relate? Great. Let's talk to me about it.
Be friends.
So, right. And so sometimes you really just need a professional, someone who's studied, someone who can really tell you what you're going through is okay. And here are some things that you can have to kind of counteract these feelings that you're feeling. And people who don't understand that or who are going to look over it and, like I said, gaslight, because that is a really huge thing. And what's crazy, I didn't know what gaslighting was until this year, but I was like, it's something that was like frustrating me. And when I finally realized the definition of it, I was like, that's it. And it happens in the medical field. So gaslighting is when basically someone is trying to make you feel like what you're going through is not actually happening. They're like, I'm trying to think of a good example of gaslighting. It's like if I say,
the way I think of it is they're pretty much just, they're telling you you're wrong and smiling.
Yeah,
and they're just convincing you to believe that you're wrong. Even
it's like if you're like my stomach is really hurting. I feel really sick, and they're like, no, it's just you just ate a bad piece of candy. You'll get over it in a few minutes. I promise you're fine. Even though you're like, no, but I really feel like I'm about to explode. I'm dying, and they're like, no, I promise you've got to be fine. There's no possible way I ate the same thing as you. You couldn't possibly be feeling that way because I'm not feeling that way. That's gaslighting, to shut down how you're feeling and to kind of just negate it completely. I think an overall takeaway from that is that we do need to be much better at explaining to our youth what's going on with them, why it's going on with them, and that ultimately everything passes and does get better. Yes, that was a good point. And so we're going to move on to the next question, which is, why are most teens reluctant to talk to their parents about their mental health concerns?
Do you want? I can start.
You can go ahead and start. I love it. Go ahead.
I was kind of, so I read the questions in advance, and I was really kind of thinking about this one, because one thing I did get from COVID and shutdown and everything is I'm staying with my parents, and I got to learn about my parents, you know, like in a way that I've never had the opportunity to. And I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit thankful for this year for giving me that opportunity, because it just brought all of us closer together as a family, and that's what we all need. Even if it's not blood, you need family in your life. So
Definitely.
So even if you don't realize what you're doing, I think a part of the reason why you don't talk to your parents is because you're protecting them. Because no matter what, if you say something to your parents, they're like, well, what did I do wrong?
Of course.
Because they want to know, they're like, where did I go wrong in raising my baby? I tried to do them right. And that's, no matter what, that's a human response.
Yeah.
They're all going to do it. And we don't want to sit through that. Like,
because now my mental health concern has become about your concerns for me.
And you're the parent. I shouldn't have to do that. So then you're just like, I don't even want to go through that, because we got to face that before we can actually even address my problem.
Yep.
Which, remember, I had a problem. You're focusing on what you did wrong.
Right. Right. And then piggybacking off of that, I think that what we need to remember is, like we just said, a lot of teens don't understand what is going on with them. And like, I've been even now still, I get really sad or really depressed and don't want to go anywhere or do anything. And I have no idea why. Wasn't brought on by anything at all. Can't explain it to you. Just, this is how I'm feeling, and I wish I wasn't, but it is how it is. And so as a teen, how do you tell your parent that, like, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I sometimes don't want to live anymore, whatever the case may be? How do you say that to your parent and don't have a reason to back it up? You don't have anything to show for it, you know, that this happened to me and this is why I'm sad. You just, it's a switch. I think it's a little bit of being scared because you don't know what's wrong with you, and you don't want to sound stupid. You don't want to sound like, you know, you're just whining for no reason. But as well as, scaring your parents, you let them know this is how I'm feeling, and they're like, well, how could you be feeling this way? You know, I'm taking care of you, aren't I? You know, I thought everything was well. But sometimes I think that it's just not knowing how to express that in a healthy way, or even say, I have no reason for how I'm feeling, but this is how I'm feeling, and I still need help.
Yeah. Now that I'm older, I tell my parents like what I went through as a kid. Like, I went through bullying. I was like teased nonstop. I don't know why. Child, it was whatever. But I tell my parents that now. They're like, what? You didn't tell me this. Why didn't? If you would have told, I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I didn't want you to worry about me at school.
Right.
I didn't want you to think that I was doing
Mm-hmm.
something wrong to be teased. I didn't want all these preconceived notions on me before I even actually can tell you what's wrong, because I don't know what's wrong anyways. I think that a lot of kids go through that, like the being scared of scaring them, the being scared of getting judged. Sometimes even when you do tell them, some parents are so, what is the word? Not nonchalant, not... They just don't believe it.
Dismissive.
Yes, dismissive. They don't believe it. They're like, well, you weren't raised... I didn't raise
you to be like that.
Right.
You need to shake that off.
Yeah, why are you depressed?
Yeah.
You have everything you want. You have clothes.
Right.
Baby,
There's no
I don't
reason for you to
care.
act like that. Yeah.
Which, that does make me want to bring up and make sure we do cover, there are bad parents. And it sounds like we all had good parents, but something that's not talked about enough is just that there's just plain bad parents.
There are.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't know how to relate to their
You can't
kids.
talk to them. And if you can't talk to them, that's where your friends and even like teachers that you connect with, like, I mean, and why I say friend too, especially, is sometimes you can't do it with an authority figure, or you're so afraid of the repercussions.
Friends
like,
have been a big part.
Some parents can be horrible just as well as anybody else. And if you have horrible parents, like, go to your friends, just talk about it. Like, find a friend whose house you can stay at sometimes.
Even if you don't have horrible parents, find a friend. Like, because I remember being younger, I talked to my friends more than I talked to my parents. And I know it's bad, but like, I needed to talk to my friends more because I knew that they understood me. I knew that they were on my same level.
That's exactly, I think, because me and my mom have talked about that. She's like, well, why do you always go with your friends, or what do you do with your friends? And the thing is that it's very much so I don't have to be any type of way. I don't have to behave in any manner other than exactly how I am when I'm with my friends.
Y'all not our friends.
Right.
Well, ain't that
not our friends. So turn that
I'm
around.
not really a little friend.
What are we doing here?
So,
Also, before before I move on from this topic, because we are running out of time, but I wanted to say, because we were throwing out a lot of good reasons as to why, teens don't come to their parents with these issues. And I think that another one for me was you don't want to be a spectacle. That's something else I feel like once you open it up to your parents, I'm feeling depressed or I'm feeling, this sad, to where I feel like I need to tell you. Now it's okay, well, we need to see specialists. We need to take you this, that, and the other. Do you need, what is it? Like, is it school? And you don't want to be a spectacle. You don't want it to be this huge thing. You just want to talk. Or you don't want to talk about it at all. You just want someone to know that this is why you're lagging, or this is why you're not getting out of bed. It's not because, you're lazy. It's just because you're not feeling your best. But yeah, there are so many reasons why kids don't go to their parents.
I could go
on forever.
Yes. I was like, oh, sorry, we're talking too long about things.
Our next question is, how do teens/young adults know when their mental health has become more serious than just being sad?
Do you want to
Child, I don't know.
Yes, I was gonna say, so I have never been diagnosed with a mental disorder ever. But what I do know is that from sophomore year of high school to, I think things started to like feel less heavy or less sad daily when I got to maybe like my second semester of college, once I really started to I was in the throes of AMDA. You know how that goes.
You ain't thinking about nothing
but class. Exactly.
And maybe food.
And that really took off for me, and so that was really healthy. But from sophomore year all the way up until that point, yes, I was happy, and yes, I was with my friends. But there were many times that it was very dark. And I mean, Courtney, you were my best friend at the time. You really know. Really dark. And I think that a lot of it,
that in high school.
Yeah, it did. And I feel like a lot of it stems from fear of the future and things like that. But I just remember being like, there's no way I'm going to be able to graduate high school and get into college and actually have a future. I don't have any money. I am not doing too good in classes right now. And I just remember being like, all these societal standards that I'm not meeting, there's no way that I'm going to be able to make something of myself, and being like, what, then if this is the case, then I might as well just end it here. And so, and that was very serious, and that was something that I battled with for a while. And I don't know how I got to that point, and I don't know why I felt so sad, but I know that at that point I understood that it was way more serious than just feeling sad. It was out. Yeah, literally had a hole in my bed from my, I laid in it so often. There was a dent shaped for my body in my bed because I wouldn't get out. So I think that is when it switches from being just extremely, sad to it being a real problem. Maybe a mental disorder is when you can no longer function the way that you should be functioning, no longer normally, you can't go to class anymore. Or you start to have these thoughts of not wanting to even wake up the next day. You don't want to keep living. You don't want these responsibilities of life anymore. Literally just living, breathing, having to, wake up and say hello to people and having to be social. These responsibilities of life are just something you no longer want to do. I think that when you get there.
Well, I kind of disagree. I want to say it's earlier than that, because that's when that's when it's too late, so to speak. Where it's you got to recognize if you feel that slightly, then it's something you should address at least.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
write in a journal. I know that I am a journal queen. Okay, and all my mentees hate it. Hello, baby. Write in your journal, because you notice patterns in yourself over the years, and also it's such therapy to write to yourself, because your brain is so much smarter than you think it is. And you will write, if you really concentrate and continue to write until your hands hurt, you'll write your way out of things, and it's amazing, because that's the only way I survived. Also, try to notice your patterns. If you notice, I get crying fits especially when there's big changes. So if you notice that for example, crying fits are coming whenever you're moving or whenever you're transferring to something big, then maybe you need to talk to someone about that. Because that, I figured out now, that is anxiety. It's not because I'm just overwhelmed. No, I have anxiety over doing something. Some crying fitting, cries everywhere.
And anxiety is hard to spot.
Exactly.
I still miss it.
Especially in Black people, child, because we all have it. Just try to notice patterns and talk to as many people as you can, even if you feel like you're driving people crazy. There's never not enough people to talk to. I mean, people think that they're a burden on others. You're not. Unfortunately, we're here to help each other. So allow someone to help you, even if it's just your friend that may not actually understand what you're going through. Okay.
Yes. And then our final question, and I think we've said I think everything we've said is going to really feed into this is, how has COVID-19 affected the mental health of young people? And so everything that we've said, I mean, friendships are really what got us through. Being with your friends, being able to kind of escape and do what you need to do. Away from being alone, I think, is a big part of what kind of feeds your depression or your sadness or that darkness. And I think that
or being around people who make you feel horrible.
Yeah, not having an escape from at-home issues that may be, really weighing down on your mental health. I think that COVID-19 has really affected, I know that it's affected me, and I'm 23, and I have my own home, and I don't really rely on social interaction anymore for my everyday happiness or whatever it may be. But I know that even the issues that I have had, like not being able to see my friends really that much at all this year, has really taken a negative tone. And so I know that young people who are in their homes right now with their parents who are stressed out, doubly stressed out, it cannot be fun for them. They can't really go out and be active. There's not a lot of, social interaction happening between them and their friends. School, I know like school was a lot of our escape, even though it was also a lot of our biggest stress. But yeah, I think that we touched on a lot of really important topics today, and I think that we all brought a uniqueness to this conversation that I really appreciated. And so I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Keeping It Real While We Heal. Everyone stay tuned this year. So throughout 2021, we will be touching on a lot of teen mental health topics. And if this is something that, feels important to you, definitely continue to tune in with us. And thank you so much. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Charlize. This is a great conversation.